Katie Redenius, thank you so much for joining us for this Machine Heads interview. Welcome in. How you doing today?
Hey, very good. Nice to talk with you, Wayne. So happy to be here.
You as well. Yeah, no, I'm super stoked that you were able to carve some time out for us. And today, obviously, we're going to talk. Katie, you're the senior product manager for mini track loaders and SAL small articulated loaders at Bobcat. So yeah, we're going to talk about the latter. Before we actually started recording, we were talking about how complementary those two products are to each other. It makes perfect sense that that you're managing both because they're both kind of targeting honestly kind of like what are some situations I can be in where I don't necessarily have to use a compact track loader or a skid steer, and that's what I had in the past, but maybe I'm doing tree care or snow removal or landscaping or something like that where I need a smaller machine, or residential where I need a smaller machine, and the CTL and the skid steer just kind of maybe they're a little too big for certain things. So that's kind of like where the stand-on track loaders, like the mini track loaders and the SALs, kind of come in.
hmm
So they do it very differently from each other, but that's kind of like their aim is to almost kind of like steal market share away a little bit from skid steers and CTLs. But you guys launched your two small articulated loaders, the L23 and L28, back in 2020. And now it was my understanding, even at the time, that really it had been maybe 3-4 years since you guys had even first started, researching that category. And then, it obviously made sense for you to enter that category based on what we were saying before. It's like you guys bread and butter, skid steers and compact track loaders. Here's something that like it could be, a threat to that business, but it could also be an opportunity for you guys to kind of capitalize on some of that and offer both options. But what have the past 4 or 5 years of having this machine available on the market? If you think about kind of like the research you did, I think before we started recording, you mentioned Avant, and kind of like figuring out, seeing the success that they had with the small articulated loaders, and kind of like that was a growing thing. Tell us what you guys have learned in the past 4 or 5 years of offering this product and everything.
Yeah, the past 4 or 5 years, just maybe even taking a little step further back, when we were first looking to get into the industry, we saw it as an up and coming industry, very similar to the mini track loader markets. And so what made it attractive for us was that exactly right. We see this demand for a small, compact machine that also needed to be turf friendly. And so that's what really kind of helped us gravitate in that direction. At the same time, we were also seeing increased demand on the mini track loader and trying to understand where's that coming from? What are the environmental drivers that are pushing it that way? And so after launching the SAL, what are some of the things that we've learned? It's exactly, a lot of what we expected. It's a very turf friendly piece of equipment that we can depend on for when there's a lawn that's already established and you need to go beyond the backyard gate. This is the product that can get you there. So we see it a lot in the tree industry that they're using it. They're doing storm cleanup from trees going down, or just trying to take care of those trees that a customer no longer wants in their backyard. It's very turf friendly so that they can go back, lift up a heavy trunk because of its lifting capabilities. It's very easy then for it to take the trunk from the backyard out to the front boulevard where the chipper's, sitting on the road. And, the best thing is that these operators that are using the small articulated loaders, they don't have to go back and do the lawn remediation like they did in the past with other type of equipment. That makes a big difference, not only in just their time, but also in the cost that they're charging then to their clients. A lot of clients too these days in residential areas, they don't want their lawn eaten up or messed up. It's a point of pride for a lot of people. And if you live up in the North Country area, you have a very short summer and you do not want to be spending your time redoing your lawn. You want to, spend your time enjoying that outside area. So that's a big plus that we learned, how turf friendly it was, how impactful it was into the industry, in growing the industry. I think we saw the industry double that first year when we entered. So just growing the awareness around the product, as well as it was also around the same time that we were getting into the zero turn mower side of the business, and seeing the crossover from the lawn care industry also into, kind of the smaller landscaping industry. So I think we maybe have probably potentially underestimated how complementary of a product it was for the mini track loaders, and how, not only is it important for a manufacturer like us to diversify our product lines and to make sure that we're continuing to assess our customer needs, but it's also important for our own customers to be diversifying the products that they keep in their equipment yards. And so when I've gone out and I've talked to customers on both MTs and SALs, I'll be going out and doing a visit for MTs, and they have a small articulated loader too. And I got to see more and more of that over the last 4 years. And it hit me of like, yes, these people are making sure that they diversify their equipment yards so that they can better meet their clients' needs. So it's great to be able to have something like a small articulated loader where you can go out, you can drive on the established lawn, and you don't have to worry about that lawn remediation. Or if you are not going to be operating on, a lawn, maybe you're going to be going out to like an unfinished pad that you're working on, and you can take your mini track loader out there for that. And so it was really cool to talk with the operators and understand, oh yeah, we sent, the L23 and L28 over to this site today. But yeah, but it wasn't a very good, site for the mini track loader. So we sent, the L23 and L28 to that site, while the MT100 went to, a different site down the road. And so they're able to diversify their business and better meet their clients' needs as well with the diversified products that we offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and turning to kind of like, you're kind of getting into there, like specifically kind of like I guess how adoption of both of these machines, which are both kind of, they were not necessarily established big share categories here in North America. They were both kind of like, these are both machines, especially with the SAL kind of coming more from like a European kind of use case and standpoint. The mini skid has been around, or the stand-on skid has been around since the 90s, and the original kind of dingo machine. So that idea is not new, and in certain industries it's been fairly established. But the SAL, they're kind of like coming into this market, or the stand-on is kind of having a resurgence. Or maybe kind of like, okay, now that hydraulics and attachment technology and design has kind of like gotten to a place where like, hey, you can take this tool and it can go on an SAL, or it can go on to a stand-on skid, or it can go on to one of your CTL or skid steers. So like, I think the tool carrier kind of nature of both of these machine categories has certainly kind of led to, and just kind of everybody seeing like, oh man, if I'm going to have this machine, I want it to be as versatile as possible. But with these two categories, you're seeing a real kind of, you can see the sense, especially for some specific contractors and types of work that are done, you can see the sense in having both of them. What else have you learned about kind of like with the North American market? How has that adoption gone specifically with the SAL? How are contractors in North America using these machines? What are the industries? You've mentioned tree care and landscape, and it sounds like construction is not quite there because it doesn't make as much sense as just kind of the previous machines. What does it kind of look like? How would you characterize adoption so far in this region?
Yeah, adoption for us is number one market for us, and applications are the landscaping market, because that's where it really shines. I don't think the construction market has bought onto it nearly as much because they don't really require, products to be turf friendly. Whereas the landscaping market, they're going in, they're already on an already established lawn. They're coming in, they're putting in decks, they're doing tree work, they're putting in fences, they're putting in brick patios. And so they're going across the customer's lawn. And so it's something where, the construction industry, they typically don't have that they have to encounter. And so Our number one market is the landscaping industry. And, why some of the adoption has really taken place in the past few years is the medium lot size for a new home has shrunk 18% from 2010 to 2020. And so that's where you see the small articulated loaders really shine, is in those small, really compact areas. That's where you see these small articulated loaders really shine, is in areas where they have pre-established lawns and they're needing to go into tight spaces. Another area beyond the landscaping that we see that this is really helpful for clients is that when you're going into the grounds and maintenance side of the business. And oddly enough, if you're in the North Country, kind of landscaping stops in about October, November, and your snow removal begins. And so we see people are just loving these for snow removal on sidewalks and in driveways. And they've really been adopted like wholeheartedly for their snow removal capabilities. And rightly so. Sidewalks are tighter, getting around spaces is difficult, and having that maximum, versatility as well as visibility to your work site is really important in those snow removal. And so for these landscape customers who are also those snow removal customers, now they have a piece of equipment that they can use year round and get the full utilization out of their equipment on a small articulated loader, compared to maybe something where if they had a skid steer before, they were maybe not using it very much in the summertime because, as you know, skid steers have a tendency to do a lot of damage to customers' lawns. So this is a great product, not only for the landscaping side of the business, but it's also a really good tool for snow removal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And kind of following up on that, when we think about kind of like how these SALs are fitting into North America, is there anything, obviously, like this machine category really first was more popular in terms of like a global region, in Europe, and now it's kind of making its way and growing in popularity here in North America. Are there any differences in the type of customer that you mentioned, kind of like landscape, lawn care, tree services, and stuff like that? More like the ancillary type industries are making use of this machine here. Is it more of like a general construction machine in Europe? And so is that something that maybe you guys are kind of preparing for, is kind of like maybe some crossover into construction? Or is the demand for features here in North America really kind of limited to, like you said, exactly, like getting into smaller spaces? And why customers like it in Europe, is that different from why customers like it here?
Yeah. In Europe, they're using it a lot for agriculture.
Okay.
So in North America, we have a lot of larger kind of farm areas. So they're using, typically nowadays, I see a lot more CWLs just because of like the size and the capacity of these North American farms compared to the European farms. So
Gotcha.
European farms that we saw a lot of them going to were like smaller, kind of a little bit larger than like a hobby farm that you would see maybe in North America and stuff.
Okay.
From what I know of the European market for our Bobcat, L23 and L28, for our kind of size being under that 25 horsepower, we don't see a lot of it going into the construction area over there, really.
Yeah.
It's not that they want a larger model. So if we
Okay.
do, have in the future that we would get a larger model, then I could foresee that being used a little bit more because it has more capabilities than for that construction kind of type work.
That actually brings up a good question, and one that I had not thought of until just now. So apologies for that. But like, where do you see kind of like the line then between like, well, why don't I just get a compact wheel loader, or why would I want this? Is it literally just size, and then kind of like as much capability as you can get at a much smaller size point? What is the kind of like, how do I make that decision if I'm kind of confused between compact wheel loader and SAL?
Absolutely. So that was actually an internal company question as well, of what do we foresee the size, kind of crossover for CWLs and then for the small articulated loaders. So it really mostly comes down to the environment that the small articulated loader is working in, as well as the wheel loader, the compact wheel loader. And so you could see that a landscaper would want both.
Hmm.
So a landscaper might be using a CWL around his yard and loading up, large material like chips, wood chips, different things. And so he's using more of a CWL around the yard. And then more so at the client's job site, they're using a small articulated loader then. And a lot of these applications, it's both that you could see being used. But what the crossover point is really is really the size of environment that you're going into. So again, small articulated loaders right now we see going into a lot of residential areas as well as kind of smaller commercial areas. So in this kind of the same example is like snow removal. You're not going to take a CWL down a sidewalk. You're going to ruin a lot of turf with that.
Right.
But you aren't going to also then take a small articulated loader and try to remove, a parking lot of snow. So they both have their areas of where they shine. The SAL is going to shine with those sidewalks, kind of those smaller areas for snow removal. The CWL is really going to shine in those parking lots. And then even if you're going to load up the snow and haul it out with trucks, that's where you're going to see the CWL shine then as well.
Yeah, and I
And so
know
it's
agriculture
tiny the
is
size of the environment that you're going to be operating in.
okay. Yeah, I mean, and I know too, like that agriculture even here has also kind of started to adopt the CWL, the larger, the
Hmm.
compact wheel loader as well. And so, like, would you say that? I mean, like, obviously the SAL is capable of like load and carry tasks, and but it seems like the CWL is still more. It's becoming more of a tool carrier, and there's a lot more attachments where it's like you can put this attachment on a compact wheel loader too. But it still seems like the majority of its use is still kind of like load and carry, and
Yeah.
then the SAL seems like more of a true hybrid in that you can put attachments on it like a snowblower or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
instead of it just being focused on load and carry, right?
Yeah, definitely do it. That's how we kind of think of it too as well for a
Okay,
customer base is CWL definitely a load and carry kind of type thing or push. You're gonna push some snow, you're gonna push a lot of snow with that CWL. Whereas like the SAL, it's a great tool carrier because it has that front auxiliaries and you should have that front articulation with your seat. You have a lot of visibility then to where your attachment and where the work is being done with the attachment.
gotcha. Okay, well, and let's move on to talk specifically about you guys models at Bobcat, the L23 and L28. Take us through kind of like the key features of these machines, kind of like what you guys really like to beat your chest about in terms of like what makes these a great Bobcat take on the SAL. But then also kind of tell us a little bit about how they differ. What is the differences between the L23 and the L28?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with the difference between the two machines. So the L23 does not have a telescopic lift arm. And so that's the main difference. And then with the L28, we add a telescopic lift arm. And then we also add counterweights to the back of that machine. Everything else between the two machines are the same, but you get that added lift extension. So it goes out to 104 inches with that lift height with the L28. So there's certain customers, like in the snow removal business, who really don't require that extra reach, that extra lift height. And so they're, buying the L23 more so than the L28. But obviously, landscapers, tree working folks, those are individuals, they're buying the L28 because they really desire that added lift that they can get with that telescopic lift arm then. And then for the differences or kind of like the key points between them, I would say, from a more of a product line perspective, one of the things that we recognized was that, these are typically going out to landscaping customers, and sometimes landscaping customers, it's their first equipment purchase. And so we wanted to make it be affordable as well as really flexible for them and how they made that purchase. And so one of the decisions that we made was we have a modular style cab. And so in order for maybe a newer individual who's getting into the landscaping business, if they wanted to purchase a 3 L28 without a cab, so if they wanted like the base model, and just kind of see like, okay, is this the right thing for my business? Can I drum up enough business here this spring, summer, early fall to kind of make some payments and stuff? We wanted to make it affordable for them to do that, and then also make it flexible. So then, all right, I've gotten my business kind of established. I've gotten some work done. And now I'm going to, have this for the winter. I want to keep this utilization of the equipment going. Now I can add in, the windows for my cab and add in a heater for the cab. So I can use this year round for the snow removal. I mean, some of these people are buying the product and they're literally growing their business with the type of product that we're putting out there. And a lot of times too, so we see that in the green industry a lot, is that customers are starting out as mowing lawns, kind of doing lawn keeping around. They're getting a few clients, get in their community and things. And then all of a sudden, maybe a storm comes through, or a client has, a deck that they want to put in, or a fence that they want to put in, some tree branches or something that they need to clean up. And they typically go to person that's close to them that's already working on their yard. And they ask, hey, who would you recommend that, could clean up this tree after this storm? Or who could put a fence in for me? And so they're asking the people who are taking care of their lawns, who would they recommend? And they start to think, this is a lot of business that I'm recommending. Maybe I should, expand my business a little bit more and take on some of these jobs. And so you see them start as renting pieces of equipment like a mini track loader or now a small articulated loader and trying these pieces of equipment out and really, again, just getting their very first equipment purchase going with these two type of products. It's very frequent that I hear that this is their first piece of equipment that they're purchasing. So keeping it affordable and making sure that they can establish their business is important and stuff for us. The other item, that we've incorporated to keep it really versatile is to have a Bobcat coupler for our attachments. So as we talked earlier, this is a great tool carrier. So making sure that it's easy to use all those different tools is what we, wanted to come up with the Bobcat adapter. Like you had mentioned earlier, you can use then the attachments that you use on your MT100. You can use those same attachments that you're using on your skid or your CTL, also on your small articulated loader. So again, just using not only that carrier, but also all those attachments purchases that potentially you've already made. And so keeping it versatile with that Bobcat adapter then.
Yeah, and how give us an idea of how powerful in terms of hydraulic capability an SAL can get, and is there any kind of like what would be like the cutoff in terms of like tools that you could use between like the three machines? Like what are we looking at in terms of just like what can you put on one of these things?
Oh, absolutely. So we see a lot of grapples being used on the small articulated loaders. A log grapple is very popular with our tree service folks. Also, snow attachments we talked about. So capabilities at 100% efficiency, the ox couplers have 12.1 gallons per minute. So typically, you don't get 100% efficiencies out of your couplers. So you're looking a little bit more like 11.4 gallons per minute out of the couplers then. So you can do a lot of different snow removal pieces. You can do a snow blower. You can do an angle broom, a lot of snow blades. We do have a snow pusher as well. But again, typically when you're getting those larger jobs, you find people are usually using a larger piece of equipment then.
Yeah. So these would just be more for like the sidewalks or the smaller yards or smaller areas and stuff like
Yep.
that.
Yep. Sidewalks, trails through the park. Great use of this equipment as well.
Okay. And then one of the things you mentioned was the modular cab on these two, and obviously one of the differentiators too, not only between the models, but like a unique feature that you guys are bringing to, or not necessarily a unique feature, but one that definitely kind of like maybe differentiates the lineup, or it's definitely a nice option to have, is that telescoping boom on the L28. But you mentioned the telescoping boom and then the modular cab. Can you give me a little bit more information on the modular cab, and exactly how that works, and like what all pieces? I mean, can you essentially take like a completely cabless machine and then through accessories turn it into an enclosed
Yeah,
heated cab? Oh, okay. So how
yeah.
does that work?
You can buy the door, you can buy the front and rear window, and then also the side window. And then you can just buy the heater box then and get that installed.
That's
And
fantastic.
so it's completely modular. And so again, too, what we hear is that uh, again, that kind of year-round utilization of the product don't want to have the cab on during the summertime. They want to make sure that they get that airflow going through there to keep themselves cool. And so they're taking off, the side windows, the side door during the summertime, storing them. And then in the wintertime, they'll just install them back on. And it's a pretty easy kind of hook system on the door. So you can just kind of pull it up and take it off. And then on the windows too, it's pretty simple to get those back installed.
Yeah.
But it just gives that flexibility to stay cooler in the summer, not make it feel like a greenhouse inside of a cab, and get that airflow then going.
Exactly. I mean, and it's I think in addition to the telescoping boom and having that option on the L28, I mean, like you've got a nice bit of differentiation there, because one of the other things we were talking about before we started to record though is like if you have this and then like the stand-on skid type machines, these are both like very small amounts of space to like do something new in, right? So
Yeah.
it kind of becomes like, that doesn't mean you guys aren't thinking, because obviously I think like this modular cab is just like it's a fantastic idea. It's one of those things. It's like, well, why doesn't every machine like have something like this, right? That where you could install this really quickly. And but you guys have been really thinking, and I mean, whether it's kind of like the software kind of like enabled features at the dealership on the skid steers and the CTL, you guys have been thinking about that for like a long time. How do we give a customer a machine that can continue to provide value in the way that they want moving forward? But could you tell me a little bit about like, are there any other places you guys are like looking to kind of differentiate, whether it be kind of like the controls or the cab, or continuing to look at kind of like the geometry of the lift arm and stuff like that? Because I know it's got to be tough really differentiating and innovating on a machine this small.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Bobcat, we launched this machine back in 2020. This is our first iteration of the machine. And as we were talking earlier, you learn a lot more when you have customers who are buying the product, and you get to understand the product a lot better and how it's being used. One of the key things is understanding the joystick and how that's working, and how we can use, other types of product lines, joysticks to further enhance. We just want to keep the operator so that they're comfortable and that they're ergonomic. And right now we have the fingertip joysticks to be able to telescope your lift arm in and out, as well as to activate then your first auxiliaries as well. And so making sure that we keep their hands on the joystick, that helps them stay comfortable, because some of these operators are operating for long hours. I remember talking to a snow removal customer who had been in his machine for over 15 hours during snow removal time, trying to get the job done as quickly as possible. As far as operator comfort goes, I think that's a company wide kind of type of initiative that we've really been looking into, as far as how do we keep our customers as comfortable as possible. It definitely goes beyond the seat a lot of times, is what we've found. There's things that we can do in or around the cab to make them feel less fatigued. And so that's something that we're continuing to ideate on. As far as the L23 and L28 goes, we really tried to make that front foot space as wide and as open as possible. Same, there was a lot of consideration with the head space and making sure that there was enough movement for the head to move up and down. Have developed kind of a just maybe a like a saying is
Mm-hmm.
like cone of comfort. And so when we think of operators on, let's say, a mini track loader and an SAL, we know that that operator isn't going to stay, you know, directly in their seat the entire time. They're
Right.
going to be leaning to look on the side, especially when they're operating, near landscaping that's already been established. You're trying to get as close as you can without disturbing it. And so, what we say in this operator cone of comfort is how do we make it really comfortable for them to lean, all the way around, forwards and backwards, and stay as comfortable as possible. Same thing is when you're going over bumps in the road, you want to make sure, all right, same thing. My operator cone of comfort above my head, I got to make sure that I'm staying comfortable and I have enough space in order to do that as well. So it's one of the things that we look at in the company and we ask ourselves, all right, how do we keep this person as comfortable as possible, even when they're leaning, when they have to see, potentially when they're getting a little bit jostled about because of the roughness of the terrain that they're traversing on.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, yeah, and honestly, like, it's a challenge, but it's at least an interesting one in terms of kind of like figuring that whole thing out on in such small spaces. One of the other things I wanted to kind of we'll kind of wrap up on, but I think that the other kind of main questions about these machines that folks might have would be within transportation and maintenance. And so, could you give us an idea of kind of like what it looks like to get these machines around and how realistic it is to? I mean, I'm sure there's some customers that, in this, rather than taking like a CTL or a skid steer with them, they could just trailer, both a stand-on skid or MTL with one of these SALs. But like, what does it look like to transport these machines, and then what does the maintenance of them look like? It should be a pretty good situation since they're under 25 horsepower. But yeah,
Yeah,
what's that
so you're
like?
transporting the piece of equipment. So a small articulated loader is 4,200 pounds or just under 4,200 pounds in operating weight compared to a smaller skid steer loader. Then we're looking closer to like 6,200 pounds, 5,800 pounds, depending on kind of which small to medium sized skid steer loader. So it can make a sizable difference in kind of the size of trailer that you're purchasing, what kind of licensing requirements then that the driver needs for that transportation as well. So it's a lot of a smaller trailer need in order to take that small articulated loader. And it does give some space, like you were saying, to load up then less than 4,000 pound, mini track loader too, if you needed to take two pieces of equipment to the job site.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of maintenance, what do these machines kind of require?
I would say the biggest thing in terms of maintenance is your grease points. So on our machine, we have 8 grease points. We use some composite bushings to try to eliminate some of those grease points and make it easier, more efficient for the operator to take care of their machine. Whereas some of our competitors, they have, 11 plus more grease points going on their machines. Otherwise, the main thing is to follow that operating manual in terms of service, changing their oil on time, making sure that they're checking their filters and fluids, and following the recommendations on the operating manual.
Well, Katie, that's all that I had. But is there, I guess, last question would be: is there anything that you want to leave, kind of like people that are interested in, maybe researching for the first time, getting a small articulated loader? Is there anything you want to leave them with?
Oh, I would encourage people to go try them out. There's just a really big difference between a skid steer and a small articulated loader. And I think that it's such a new product line to North America, and that there's still not that much awareness into this product line. But if you are operating in an environment where you have very tight quarters, you have some turf that you're going to be operating on, those are I would say some of the main criterias of looking at a small articulated loader. It's a very comfortable ride. So a lot of times too, you hear of customers depending on what their needs are, whether not they want a mini track loader or they want a small articulated loader. Some of the discussion then that you can have with them is whether or not they want to be sitting down in their seats, whether or not they feel comfortable with operating a joystick, or if they feel more comfortable operating with a steering wheel. And so those are more of like the kind of helpful tips of like, go out, try it, operate it, see what you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Katie, thank you so much again for joining us on Machine Heads to talk about small articulated loaders at Bobcat. I hope to do this again sometime. But yeah, thank you so much for the information, and yeah, have a good rest of your day. Okay.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Wayne.
Thank you.